A quiet contemplation. It's 1944. Above the hot, humid jungles of the Pacific, where every leaf hides a secret and the air vibrates with tension, an invisible hunter silently glides through the azure sky. Below, in the emerald depths, Japanese fighters, like desperate moths, surge upward, striving to intercept American bombers, unaware that they are being stalked by a phantom, the very embodiment of death in the air. This aerial avenger was no hardened killer, no grim warrior, but a simple, unassuming young man from quiet Wisconsin. Yet by the end of that merciless war, his name would echo across the globe, credited with 40 confirmed victories. An aerial lethality record that seemed impossible to break. How did this inconspicuous U.S. Army Air Force's pilot become their most formidable weapon, their deadliest instrument of war? This is the incredible story of a man who couldn't be killed, a record that was never surpassed, and the harsh, unforgiving truth behind becoming America's ace of aces. Have you ever felt that circumstances are beyond your control? That your destiny is predetermined and unchangeable? What if I told you that even in the most desperate conditions, you can not only survive but become a legend? How did an ordinary person, facing unimaginable difficulties, manage to flip the script and write their own story? And what lessons can we draw from their experience to overcome our own challenges? Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. While our hero, Richard Bong, was honing his deadly aim, the world around him was ablaze with war. In Europe, the Nazi war machine, like a ruthless steamroller, crushed one nation after another. In the Pacific, the Japanese Empire unleashed a campaign of brutal conquests, leaving only ruins and pain in its wake. By 1941, America, that sleeping giant, was still slumbering, but the ominous winds of war were already sweeping across the ocean, heralding an impending storm. Bong, like many young men of his generation, felt this call. He entered the Army Air Corps Aviation Cadet Program. He was driven not by a thirst for glory or recognition, but by a simple, yet profound, almost mystical love for flight, for the boundless sky. His instructors, seasoned veterans, immediately recognized something special in him. This guy was born to fly. He didn't just pilot an aircraft. He became a part of it, an extension of it. The controls were not levers and buttons to him, but living nerves, an extension of his own body. But with this natural gift, this incredible intuition, came a dangerous trait, restlessness, an eagerness. While stationed at Hamilton Field in California, young Second Lieutenant Bong was introduced to the most advanced and, arguably, the deadliest fighter in the American arsenal, the P-38 Lightning. He fell in love with this machine, and this passionate affair nearly destroyed his career before it even began. Official reports, classified and meticulously archived, document only a series of unauthorized aerobatic demonstrations. But the reality was far more reckless, more audacious. Bong transformed the sky over San Francisco into his personal playground. He flew his P-38 down Market Street so low that casual pedestrians could clearly make out the rivets on its wings. He performed a loop around the Golden Gate Bridge, a blatant, breathtaking violation of every possible rule, every conceivable prohibition. He was undoubtedly showing off, but at the same time, he was testing the limits, his own and the aircraft's capabilities. Oh, his commander, General George Kenney, was a man who had no time for hotshots, for those who broke discipline. He was a tough but brilliant tactician, responsible for the entire 5th Air Force. When Bong was brought before him, expecting to be permanently grounded, he faced a true storm. The reprimand was so severe, so humiliating, that it would have broken a lesser man. But Kenney saw something else in the young pilot's eyes. It wasn't arrogance. It was unwavering confidence, an absolute, unquestioning mastery of his machine. He saw what the flight instructor before him had seen. He saw a prodigy, Kenny, one of the war's most astute commanders, made a decision that dramatically altered the course of the air war in the Pacific. Instead of destroying the young man's career, he forged him into a weapon, an instrument of victory. He kept Bong under his direct command, assigned him additional intensive training, and then unleashed him into the inferno of war. By September 1942, Bong was dispatched to New Guinea. This was the front line of the war, a brutal, merciless battlefield where American forces desperately tried to halt the Japanese advance, where every day was a fight for survival. The Japanese pilots he was about to face were not novices. They were battle-hardened veterans, true masters of their craft, who had been fighting since 1937. They flew the Mitsubishi A6M0, a fighter so maneuverable, so legendary, that it could outperform almost anything the Allies put into the sky. On paper, a farm boy from Wisconsin with relatively few flight hours had no chance. But Bong wasn't flying just any plane. He was flying the P-38 Lightning, designed by the legendary Clarence Kelly Johnson of Lockheed, an engineer who was ahead of his time. The P-38 was a true monster, a revolutionary aircraft unlike anything else in the sky. Its unique twin-boom design, powered by two roaring Allison engines, gave it incredible speed and astonishing climb rate. Most importantly, all its powerful armament, 4 50-caliber machine guns and one 20mm cannon, was concentrated in the nose. This was a critically important design choice. Wing-mounted guns had to be angled to converge at a specific point, requiring perfect calculation. Fire too early or too late, and you'd miss. The P-38's firepower, however, struck straight ahead in a concentrated circular saw of lead and high explosives. If a pilot could keep a target in their sights for even a fraction of a second, the result was complete, merciless destruction. But the Lightning also had a dark side, a hidden danger. It was a killer, and not just for the enemy. The aircraft was notoriously difficult to master. Its advanced turbochargers were finicky, requiring delicate tuning. In high-speed dives, it suffered from a terrifying phenomenon called compressibility, where shock waves formed over the wings, locking the controls and sending the pilot into an unrecoverable, fatal plunge. Dozens of American pilots had already died just trying to tame this beast, to understand its temperament. The Japanese masters of aerial combat knew Allied tactics perfectly. They lured American fighters into low-speed turning dogfights, where the Zero was the undisputed king, unmatched. An American pilot attempting to maneuver with a Zero often died in a matter of seconds. Richard Bong did not try to maneuver. In his first combat sorties over Buna, New Guinea, he observed, learned, and carefully calculated. He watched the Zeros dance in the sky and realized he couldn't win their game, so he invented his own unique tactic. His doctrine was utterly simple, yet brilliant. 1. Use the P-38's powerful engines to climb above the enemy. Always maintain the altitude advantage. It was his ace in the hole. 2. Convert that height into speed, diving on the target in a high-speed, lightning-fast pass. 3. Unleash the devastating firepower of his nose guns in one precise controlled burst, leaving the enemy no chance. 4. Use his momentum to climb back to a safe altitude. Never linger, never maneuver. His motto was hit and run. In half a minute, I'll tell you how this tactic changed the course of the war and made Bong a legend. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. This story, as you can see, is not a collection of isolated facts separated by clear boundaries. It's a coherent narrative where each episode flows seamlessly into the next, like a river carrying its waters. We've already understood how Bong found his path, how he transformed from a reckless novice into a formidable hunter. But what happened next, when he came face to face with the enemy, applying his new revolutionary tactics? We've already seen how Bong developed his hit-and-run strategy based on leveraging the P-38's advantages. However, as is often the case, theory is one thing, and the harsh reality of combat is quite another. His first encounters in the skies of New Guinea were not just a test of his new doctrine, but also a trial of his own nerves and instincts. How did he apply these principles in the chaos of aerial combat, where every moment could be his last? And how did his unique style, his restless character, which almost cost him his career, actually help him become elusive and deadly? Next, we'll see how his personal qualities, which seemed like flaws, turned into his greatest strengths. Imagine every one of your strikes hitting the mark, every action flawless, and every ounce of energy expended yielding maximum results. Sounds like a dream, doesn't it? How often do you, like many, scatter your efforts, making long, hopeful bursts, when true breakthrough requires only short yet deadly precision? We're talking about what distinguishes a master from an ordinary performer, about that elusive line that transforms ordinary work into art. Today, we delve into the story of a man who embodied this philosophy in the heart of war, in the skies above the Pacific. His name is Richard Bong, and his method of aerial combat was not just a tactic, but an entire philosophy: hit and run. But how did he achieve such unprecedented efficiency when other pilots merely struggled with the chaos of dogfights? What exactly lay behind his restrained, clinical, and brutally effective combat reports, which recorded only dry facts but missed the main thing: the genius at work in the sky? And most importantly, what lessons can we draw from his unique approach to precision and mastery to apply in our own lives? In this video, we will uncover not just the biography of an outstanding ace, but also 3 key principles that turned him into a living legend. Principles that might make you look at your own efforts in a new light. Prepare to see what no reports captured, but what his aircraft's cameras recorded. A chilling picture of patient stalking, careful positioning, a short brutal firing pass, and an instant retreat. This is not just a war story. It's a story about becoming surgically precise in a world full of commotion. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription, and of course, tell us in the comments where you're watching this video from. His squadron mates, observing this cold-blooded dance of death, were utterly enthralled. Major Thomas Lynch, himself a celebrated ace, compared Bong's technique to a surgeon's work. He acted patiently, with incredible precision, and never wasted anything. His ammunition efficiency was simply off the charts, exceeding all notions of what was possible. The key to this success was his innate, almost instinctive understanding of deflection shooting. This is the art of shooting, not where the target is now, but where it will be in a moment. Most pilots struggled desperately with this concept throughout their careers, trying to master it. But for Richard Bong, it was as natural as breathing, a part of him. This is what set him apart and laid the groundwork for future, even more impressive achievements, which we will discuss next. And so, his kill count began to rise at an alarming rate. First 1 kill, then 2 in a single sortie. Today a bomber, tomorrow a Japanese 0. He was a quiet, almost ghostly presence in the sky, appearing from nowhere, delivering a deadly blow, and instantly vanishing back into the dazzling sun. The Japanese, analyzing their catastrophic losses, began to notice a disturbing pattern: brutal high-speed attacks from above, carried out by some twin-tailed devil. They gave the American P-38 fighter a chilling nickname, the Fork-Tailed Devil. And Richard Bong was its most terrifying, most ruthless executor, the embodiment of that nickname. On his P-38, he painted the name of his beloved Marge, like a tender reminder of home amidst the hellish chaos. This personal detail became another stroke in his growing legend, foreshadowing events that would make his name immortal. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription, and of course tell us in the comments where you're watching this video from. Bong's name became a legendary sight in the Pacific sky, a symbol of impending death for his enemies and a beacon of hope for the bomber crews he escorted. By early 1943, he was already a recognized ace. By the end of the year, his tally was growing at an astonishing rate, and the quiet farm boy was transforming into a living legend. July 1943 over Leh Harbor, New Guinea. The air was thick with smoke and fear. A massive formation of Japanese bombers, escorted by a swarm of Zero fighters, relentlessly bore down on Allied positions on the ground. To the soldiers cowering in their foxholes, it looked like an insurmountable wave of destruction, capable of washing everything away. But high above them, in the dazzling sun, Bong and his squadron were gaining altitude, preparing for a veritable massacre that would become a classic example of his evolving genius. And we'll tell you about that next. Ooh, this battle would not just be another page in the history of aerial combat, but a classic example of Bong's evolving genius. He was no longer just a lone wolf striking from the shadows. He had become an orchestrator of aerial violence, a strategist who managed the entire theater of battle. Instead of immediately diving into the fray, he held his group at a superior altitude, forcing the Japanese to constantly look up at the glints in the sky, losing themselves in guesswork. He waited with chilling patience until the enemy formation began its bombing run. He waited for the precise moment when a bomber would expose its belly, or when a Zero would break formation, creating a vulnerability, and only then did he give the order to attack, demonstrating a level of control that astonished even experienced pilots. P-38s plunged from the sky like silver sharks, hungry for blood. Bong led the attack, his aircraft a blur of speed and purpose, the embodiment of fury. He did not engage in pointless maneuvering dogfights with the agile Zeros. He headed straight for the bombers, into the very heart of the enemy formation, where the impact yielded maximum effect. One precise burst from his nose cannon, and a heavy Mitsubishi bomber simply disintegrated in clouds of fire and black smoke. He didn't linger to watch it fall. He was already gaining altitude, converting his speed back into precious height, scanning for his next victim. It was this elusiveness and ruthless efficiency that would become the hallmark of his squadron, sowing chaos and terror among the opponents. His squadron, following his example, struck and instantly vanished, sowing chaos and confusion among Japanese pilots who simply could not track the faster, more powerful American fighters. The results were devastating. Many enemy aircraft were destroyed with minimal Allied losses. Japanese combat reports from this period are filled with an undisguised sense of fear, describing encounters with American fighters that attacked with speed and precision they simply could not counter. They knew they were being hunted not just by pilots, but by true experts, masters of their craft, and this realization only intensified the panic. It was these victories that led to an event that sharply changed his life, tearing him from his familiar element of combat. By November 1943, Richard Bong had achieved 21 confirmed victories. This was not just an impressive number, it was a historic event that propelled him to the pinnacle of fame. He was now one of America's top aces, a true celebrity in a war that desperately needed heroes to inspire the nation. General Kenny, always a perceptive commander, perfectly understood the value of such a symbol. He personally awarded Bong the Distinguished Service Cross, recognizing his exceptional exploits. And then he did the thing Bong hated most. He sent him home to the rear, where a completely different battle awaited, which we will discuss next. Bong was ordered back to the United States for a war bond tour. Suddenly, the quiet pilot who always let his flying speak for itself found himself in the public spotlight. He was celebrated before cheering crowds, his face gracing newspaper pages from New York to California. The American public embraced him with open arms. He was the humble farm boy who became a dragon slayer, the epitome of American ingenuity and courage. But Bong was unhappy. He despised the ceremonies, the endless speeches and handshakes, feeling out of place. In letters to his beloved Marge, he confessed that his heart was still in the Pacific, with the pilots who were still fighting and dying. He felt like an imposter, a show pony, while his brothers in arms were in the thick of it. He relentlessly appealed to General Kenny, practically begging to be sent back into combat, anticipating a return to the skies in a new, deadlier machine. Finally, Kenny yielded to his persistent requests. By March 1944, Bong was back in New Guinea, and a real surprise awaited him. A new, upgraded P-38J Lightning. This was a refined killing machine, designed for maximum efficiency. It boasted improved engines, a more effective cockpit heating system for high-altitude flights, and, most importantly, hydraulic aileron boosters. This innovation gave the P-38 much better maneuverability at high speeds, mitigating one of its most significant weaknesses, making it an even more formidable adversary. In Bong's hands, the P-38J was not just a fighter. It was a true scalpel, capable of incredible precision, but he was returning to a completely different war. He returned to a different war, a war that had changed significantly during his absence. Years of brutal attrition had taken their toll on the Japanese Air Force. Many of their veteran pilots had died, replaced by young men with limited training and very few flight hours. The experience gap between the two sides had widened into a chasm. For an American ace like Bong, with hundreds of hours of combat experience under his belt, encountering these new, inexperienced pilots was often, tragically, like a hawk meeting a sparrow. It was no longer the equal fight he was accustomed to, but rather a ruthless hunt. Have you ever faced a challenge that seemed insurmountable, when every step forward felt like a leap into the abyss, and the odds of success were close to zero? Imagine a world where your job is a constant duel with death, where one wrong move means the end. We all know that feeling when circumstances press down and it seems there's no way out. But what if I told you there are people who don't just survive in such conditions but thrive, rewriting the rules and exceeding all conceivable limits? Today's story is dedicated to just such a person, Richard Bong, whose name became a legend in the skies of World War II. How could one pilot constantly defy fate, emerging victorious from deadly dogfights time and again? How did he manage to set a record that still seems statistically impossible, even as others fell? And what secret formula lay behind his incredible, almost mystical invulnerability? In this video, we won't just recount his exploits. We'll uncover the very essence that made Bong a phenomenon, capable of the impossible. You'll learn about his methods, his character, and how he overcame what most considered certain doom. Stay with us and watch until the end, as we'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. His tactical genius wasn't just development, it was a true evolution, bordering on madness. He perfected the head-on attack, a maneuver that demanded not just bravery but unimaginable, almost suicidal courage. Most aces would instinctively swerve, gripped by the terror of an imminent mid-air collision. But Bong, he stubbornly held his course. His gaze, like a steel hook, was locked onto the enemy, and he only opened fire at the very last, critical second. The closing speed in such moments exceeded 800 miles per hour. The window to hit the target was less than 1 second. Recordings from Bong's gun cameras, silent witnesses to his ruthlessness, repeatedly showed him flying literally through the scattering debris of his vanquished victims. This wasn't just skill. It was predatory intuition brought to absolute perfection. Such a dance with death couldn't go unnoticed. And if you're already feeling this excitement and anticipation, it's the perfect time to remind you. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for your like and subscription, as it helps us create more stories like this. And of course, we'd love to know where you are from, so please share your city or country in the comments. By June 1944, something inevitable happened that forever etched his name into the annals of military history. During a mission over the unforgiving expanses of New Guinea, Bong shot down his 27th and then his 28th enemy aircraft. This double triumph was of colossal significance. He surpassed the legendary World War I record set by the great Eddie Rickenbacker, who had 26 confirmed victories. From then on, Richard Bong officially held the title of America's greatest living fighter ace, becoming the embodiment of unwavering power and skill. General Kenny, observing this unprecedented ascent, felt a duality of emotions: immense pride for his ace and a chilling dread. He immediately removed Bong from regular combat missions, declaring him too valuable an asset to risk. Bong, in Kenny's conviction, was not just a pilot, but a national treasure, a living symbol. His death would have been an irreparable, catastrophic blow to the morale of the entire nation. Bong himself was furious. Grounded and consumed by frustration, he adamantly argued that his true place was in the sky, leading his men. Ultimately, an uneasy compromise was reached. Kenny allowed him to fly, but only on particularly critical missions and exclusively as a flight leader, where his role would be to guide the battle rather than engage directly in every skirmish. Thus, he became not just a pilot, but a true general in the sky, whose mere presence was a strategic advantage. However, these restrictions did nothing to slow his combat fervor. On the contrary, flying priority missions often meant he was sent directly into the heart of the fiercest battles. Such was the case in October 1944 over Balikpapan on Borneo. He faced a critically important task: escorting B-24 bombers, which were to strike Japanese oil refineries, vital arteries of the enemy's war machine. The Japanese, realizing the full significance of these targets, threw all available forces into the fight, desperately trying to protect their fuel supplies. The sky over Borneo transformed into a true hell, erupting in a swirling chaos of relentless aerial combat. Bong, leading his P-38 Lightnings, masterfully positioned his formation with the sun at their backs, a classic, time-tested tactic to blind the enemy. He led the first attack, diving swiftly from above and instantly knocking an enemy fighter out of the sky. But as he pulled out of his dive, his own aircraft shuddered from a powerful explosion. An enemy fighter, like a ghost, had managed to get on his tail. Cannon shells mercilessly ripped into his right engine. Ominous warning lights danced across the instrument panel. The engine sputtered, burst into flames, and finally died, leaving the aircraft with only one beating heart. Most pilots in such a situation would have immediately disengaged, heading home on their single remaining engine. It would have been rational. It would have been sane. But Richard Bong, in that critical moment, was neither rational nor sane in the conventional sense. He was a predator, his instincts honed to a razor's edge. He feathered the dead propeller to reduce drag, activated the fire extinguisher, and calmly assessed the situation. His plane was still flying. His guns were still loaded and ready. And most importantly, there were still enemies in the sky. With his wounded, smoking P-38, he defiantly turned the heavy fighter back into the thick of the dogfight. On one engine, with catastrophically degraded flight performance, he tracked down another Japanese fighter and mercilessly shot it down. Only then did he turn for home, guiding his battered aircraft across hundreds of miles of vast ocean. When he finally landed, ground crews were horrified. His P-38 was literally riddled with bullets. An entire engine was completely destroyed. They unanimously declared the plane beyond repair, condemning it to the scrap heap. But they failed to account for one thing: the unbreakable, almost mystical bond that existed between the pilot and his war machine. Bong personally oversaw the repairs, trusting no one else with the resurrection of his Marge. And within weeks, he was back in the sky in the very same aircraft, as if defying death itself. This single incident forever cemented his legend. He was not just a virtuosic pilot. He was a fearless warrior. He was not just an ace. He was an unbreakable symbol. After that day, his kill count steadily climbed. approaching numbers no one had ever thought possible. 35, 36, 38, each new digit becoming further proof of his incredible spirit. By December 1944, he reached a staggering 40 confirmed aerial victories. This number wasn't just impressive, it was astounding, so far beyond the norm that it seemed almost unreal. In the United States, at the highest echelons of military command, a final decision was made. General Douglas MacArthur himself personally issued an order to General Kenny. This was no longer a request, but a categorical directive. Richard Bong was to be permanently grounded. His war was over. He had become too valuable a symbol to risk losing him. America's ace of aces was sent home for good, whether he liked it or not. His combat journey in the skies was complete. His last combat mission took place on December 17, 1944. It was an uneventful patrol, devoid of any enemy contact, a quiet, routine end to an extraordinary saga. Without any grand ceremonies, the combat career of the most successful fighter pilot in American history came to its conclusion. He returned to the United States, not to the quiet farm he dreamed of, but into a whirlwind of national adoration, to a nation weary of war but hungry for heroes. Richard Bong became more than just a pilot. He was a living icon of hope, a symbol of the calm, unwavering strength that would ultimately lead to victory in the war. Soon, his valor was recognized with the nation's highest award, the Medal of Honor. In the hallowed halls of the Pentagon, Secretary of War Henry Stimson himself placed the esteemed medal around his neck. The official citation was read, a dry, procedural military text describing deeds bordering on the incredible. It spoke of his outstanding gallantry and fearlessness, of risking his life far beyond the call of duty. It mentioned his unwavering courage, brilliant leadership, and relentless pursuit of the enemy, even when outnumbered and facing furious resistance. Bong, always characteristically quiet and modest, stood there, looking almost awkward in his dress uniform. This was a man who spoke through actions, not words, who felt far more comfortable in the cramped cockpit of a P-38 at 20,000 feet than in a room full of generals and politicians. After all the ceremonies, he finally found a brief moment of peace. On February 10, 1945, he married his sweetheart, Marge Vattendahl, in a church in Superior, Wisconsin. For a brief time, the deadliest ace in American history became simply a husband. A young man dreaming of building a life far from the scream of diving planes and the flash of cannon fire, far from the bloody echo of war. The war in Europe was living out its final bloody days, and the end of the global conflict finally seemed palpable. But what was the true secret to his phenomenal, unprecedented success? How did one man, flying one particular aircraft, manage to achieve a record that still seems statistically impossible, defying all laws of probability? The answer to this question lies in a unique combination of the man himself, his machine, and a tactical doctrine that was many years ahead of its time, creating the perfect amalgam for aerial dominance. Have you ever felt caught in a whirlwind of events where your every step, every effort, seems futile? No matter what you do, circumstances or your opponent always seem a step ahead, and your goals slip away like smoke. In life, as in any field, we encounter moments when achieving that flawless perfection, that mastery which distinguishes true professionals, seems unattainable. But what if there isn't just a method, but an entire philosophy that allows you not just to participate in the struggle, but to dominate it, turning every shot into an unavoidable hit and every maneuver into an unerring step towards triumph? Today, we will delve into the story of a man who didn't just fly. He rewrote the rules of aerial combat, creating a doctrine decades ahead of his time. How did he manage to develop this astonishing level of precision and control when others relied on intuition or luck? What lessons from his experience can be applied in your own life to overcome seemingly insurmountable barriers? In this narrative, we will reveal the 4 key principles that made Richard Bong an unrivaled ace, a man whose tactics were so revolutionary that they remained a benchmark years after the war. He wasn't just lucky, he was the architect of his destiny. And his journey is proof that even in the most chaotic conditions, order can be found and perfection can be achieved. Post-war analysis by Army Air Forces experts who meticulously studied his gun camera footage revealed a level of accuracy that was truly astounding. Bong's hit percentage, the ratio of rounds fired to targets destroyed, was exceptionally high, far exceeding the average of other pilots. He did not allow himself to waste ammunition. He did not rely on blind luck. His successes were founded on a cold, precise calculation of speed, angle, and timing that was deeply ingrained in his being. His youth, spent in the woods as a hunter tracking prey, taught his mind to perceive the world through the lens of lead, deflection, and a single perfect shot. No, we've only just begun to unravel the mysteries of Richard Bong's mastery, but his story is full of unexpected twists and profound lessons. Stay with us and watch until the end, as many more astonishing discoveries await you. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription, and of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching this video from. His tactical philosophy, honed over more than 200 combat missions, became the gold standard for American fighter pilots in the Pacific theater of operations. It was a doctrine built on rigorous discipline, not reckless aggression. While many other pilots engaged in dizzying close-range dogfights, those romanticized aerial duels often depicted in movies, Bong keenly understood that this was a sure path to suicide against the incredibly nimble Japanese Zero. His system was a ruthless science. First, energy. He always sought to maintain an energy advantage through superior altitude and speed. The P-38 was an outstanding high-altitude fighter, and Bong masterfully used this characteristic to dictate the terms of every engagement. He was always the one initiating the attack, not reacting to it. Second, positioning. Bong's mastery was evident in his use of the sun, clouds, and even the enemy's own formation to achieve the most advantageous position before the first shot was fired. He was a virtuoso of patient stalking, sometimes maneuvering for extended periods to gain that perfect attack angle. Third, firepower. He maximized the effectiveness of the P-38's concentrated nose-mounted weaponry. Bong knew that if he could bring his guns to bear on a target for even a fraction of a second, the outcome of the fight was predetermined. This was not a spray of bullets, but a pinpoint, deadly strike. Fourth, discipline. Never, under any circumstances, attempt to maneuver with a zero in the horizontal plane. After each attacking pass, he used his superior speed to instantly disengage, gaining altitude and preparing for the next strike. He waged a vertical war, a battle of energy and physics, while his opponents were still clinging to outdated horizontal maneuvers. The story of Richard Bong is not just a chronicle of combat exploits. It's a deep exploration of strategy and adaptation. We continue our dive into his world, and many more unexpected revelations about his journey await us. Stay with us and watch until the end, for every moment of his life holds valuable lessons. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And, of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching this video from. And then there was the aircraft itself. The P-38 Lightning proved to be the ideal instrument for his unique style of warfare. Its twin-engine configuration provided a critically important level of redundancy. It could sustain an incredible amount of damage and still bring its pilot home, as Bong repeatedly demonstrated, for example, over Borneo. Its tricycle landing gear ensured stability on the uneven, improvised airstrips of the Pacific Islands, and its turbo superchargers endowed it with high-altitude performance that many Japanese fighters simply couldn't match. In the hands of an ordinary pilot, the P-38 was a capable fighter. In Richard Bong's hands, it transformed into a weapon of historical significance, a tool that rewrote history. Letters to his beloved Marge revealed the man behind the legend. He rarely mentioned his victories. Instead, he wrote about his duty, his unwavering focus on effectively doing his job, on protecting bomber formations and supporting ground troops. He saw his role not as a glory-seeking ace, but as a protector, safeguarding those who relied on him. There was no hint of ego or bravado in him. There was only the quiet, deadly efficiency of a master of his craft, who seemed to have exhausted all the challenges of his time. But the world didn't stand still, and a new, even grander challenge was preparing for Bong. As 1945 dawned, Bong's life seemingly should have become measured and prestigious. He was a national hero, a newlywed, and a living symbol of American victory. But the warrior in his soul could not stay away from the cockpit. The military command, eager to leverage his unparalleled experience, offered him a new, vitally important assignment. He was to become a test pilot. The world of aviation was on the cusp of a revolution. Piston engines, which had dominated the skies for 40 years, were rapidly becoming obsolete. On the horizon loomed a new, terrifyingly powerful technology, the jet engine, being developed at Lockheed's Secret Skunk Works facility in Burbank, California. Kelly Johnson, the very genius who designed the P-38, created America's first operational jet fighter, the P-80 Shooting Star. The P-80 was the embodiment of the future, a sleek, futuristic machine with a single jet engine that produced 4,000 pounds of thrust, propelling it to speeds exceeding 500 miles per hour. It was an entirely new flight regime, a true quantum leap in performance and technology, and the Army needed its best and most experienced pilots to tame this new beast, to write the rulebook for a completely new era of aerial combat. Richard Bong, the acknowledged master of piston fighters, was assigned to help humanity enter the jet age. He was transitioning from the pinnacle of one generation of technology to the very beginning of the next. He was once again at the cutting edge, but this time the enemy wasn't a zero in his sights. It was the unknown, something that demanded an entirely different approach. The assignment to test the P-80 Shooting Star placed Richard Bong at the very epicenter of a technological earthquake. He, the man who had mastered the most complex piston fighter ever built, was once again a student. The P-80 was an entirely different beast. It had no propeller, no torque, just the raw, roaring thrust of a jet engine. It reacted differently. It landed at terrifyingly high speeds. It climbed into the sky as if pulled by an invisible hand. Every pilot transitioning to jets was, in the most literal sense, a pioneer exploring a dangerous and uncharted frontier. Bong, with his innate mechanical sense and incredible adaptability, quickly settled in. He respected the new aircraft, studying its systems with the same quiet intensity he applied to combat tactics. He was no longer a hunter of men, but an explorer of a machine, pushing the boundaries of what was possible and reporting his findings to the engineers who were literally inventing the future of aviation. For several months, this was his new life, a life comprised of flight logs, technical briefings, and the constant high-pitched whine of a jet turbine. Then came August 6, 1945. Lockheed Air Terminal in Burbank, California, was bathed in the warm glow of a clear summer morning. For Major Richard Bong, it was a routine workday. He was scheduled for a standard acceptance flight in a brand-new P-80, fresh off the assembly line. Meticulously, he completed his pre-flight checks, donned his gear, and climbed into the cockpit of the futuristic machine. The canopy closed, sealing him within a world of advanced technology and unexplored potential. The P-80's engine roared to life with its characteristic whine. Bong taxied to the runway, received clearance, and smoothly, yet decisively, pushed the throttle forward. The jet rapidly accelerated, pinning him to his seat, and gracefully ascended into the cloudless Californian sky, embarking on a flight that would forever alter his destiny. Imagine a moment when everything you knew, everything you were skilled at, everything you had built, suddenly becomes irrelevant. When your greatest accomplishments, your incredible bravery, are buried beneath the shadow of a new, uncharted world. Have you ever felt as though something monumental, something that changed everything, passed you by while you were simply going about your business? Today we will tell the story of a man who survived hundreds of deadly encounters, only to fall victim to an unseen enemy, his tragedy reduced to mere fine print in headlines heralding the end of one era and the dawn of another. How could the deadliest pilot of all time perish in a seemingly routine flight? Why does his incredible record appear destined to remain unbroken forever? And how did his personal tragedy become a symbol of a global shift that irrevocably altered the world? Prepare to uncover a fate that forever changed the history of aerial warfare. On that fateful day, August 7th, 1945, high above the clear California sky, Major Richard Bong, the legendary Ace of Aces, was preparing for a test flight in the cutting-edge P-80 jet fighter. He ascended, leaving the sprawling suburbs of Los Angeles behind, but the joy of flight turned to terror within moments. The main fuel pump suddenly failed. The engine, starved of its lifeblood, stalled, transforming the aircraft into a useless chunk of metal. A densely populated city lay spread beneath him, and his altitude was critically low. For a man who had survived 200 combat missions, faced swarms of enemy fighters, and returned home in a crippled P-38 with only one engine operating, this was his final, most desperate battle. A battle against relentless gravity and unforgiving time. He fought desperately for control. All his years of training, his instincts honed in hundreds of dogfights, kicked in. He attempted emergency restart procedures, but precious feet of altitude were already gone. He tried to glide the powerless aircraft back towards the runway, but it was futile. In the final moments of his life, as the ground hurtled towards him, he made one last, desperate decision: to eject. But it was too late. The altitude proved fatally insufficient. The P-80 slammed into a field, erupting in a dazzling fireball. Major Richard Bong, the Wisconsin farm boy, the deadliest American fighter pilot in history, died instantly. He was just 24 years old. Please stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. But while the greatest aerial warrior of the old era met his tragic end over California, in another hemisphere, across the vast expanse of Japan, an even more monumental and shocking drama was unfolding. On the very same day that Bong made his final flight, an American B-29 bomber, christened Enola Gay, opened its bomb bay high in the clear sky. From within, something emerged that would forever alter the course of human history. A strange weapon that plummeted towards the city of Hiroshima. In a blinding, otherworldly flash of unprecedented power, the city was obliterated, and the terrifying energy of the atom was unleashed. The world as we knew it changed irrevocably. In the shadow of these colossal global headlines, proclaiming the dawn of the atomic age, the news of Richard Bong's death, America's greatest war hero, became a mere footnote, almost unnoticed. What a profound and truly tragic irony of fate. The master of traditional aerial warfare perished on the very day that the nature of war itself, as he knew it and excelled in it, was rendered obsolete. This event didn't just mark the end of one life, it heralded the twilight of an entire era of aerial combat, which we will discuss further. 8 decades later, Richard Bong's incredible record of 40 confirmed aerial victories remains unbroken. This tally stands as the absolute maximum for American fighter pilots and is almost certainly destined never to be surpassed. Modern aerial combat, transformed into a sterile game played out on radar screens, where missiles strike targets beyond visual range, precludes the close quarters, visual dogfights that were the hallmark of World War II. The era of the ace gunner, the virtuoso of aerial ballet, has irrevocably passed. However, Bong's true greatness and influence were measured not solely by the number of enemy aircraft he downed. His legacy extends far wider. It encompassed the thousands of lives of bomber crews he shepherded to safety, and the hope of ground troops who looked to the skies for his protection. He was the architect of a tactical doctrine he developed which saved the lives of countless other pilots and became the foundation of American fighter tactics for many years to come. These principles, pioneered by Bong, are worthy of separate examination, for they truly reveal his genius. General George Kenney, a shrewd military leader who saw true genius behind Bong's reputation as a rule-breaker, later recalled him as the greatest fighter pilot he had ever encountered. Kenney emphasized that Bong's phenomenal success was rooted not in reckless aggression, but precisely the opposite, in calm, meticulous, calculated precision. He transformed deadly work into what appeared to be effortless mastery because he was an unparalleled expert in reliable, repeatedly practiced tactical principles. This wasn't merely luck or natural talent, it was a methodical, almost scientific dedication to perfecting every movement, every maneuver. But how does the world remember this man, whose life burned so brightly and ended so abruptly? Today, at the Richard Bong Veterans Historical Center, located in his home state of Wisconsin, the Medal of Honor, America's highest military award, rests in a quiet, reverent display. Beside it, like a silent sentinel, stands a meticulously restored P-38 proudly bearing the name Marge on its nose. Not merely an aircraft, but a living tribute to a great man and his legendary machine. This sight serves as a powerful reminder of a bygone era when a humble, quiet young man from the Midwest could climb into the cockpit of a fighter plane and, through sheer talent, iron discipline, and incredible will, forever alter the course of history. The battlefields where he once performed his feats are now silent. The skies where he fearlessly fought seem empty and calm. Yet his incredible record remains indelibly etched in the annals of military history. 40 confirmed victories, 200 perilous missions, and one truly unbreakable legend. A farm boy who became America's deadliest and most elusive ace, whose story continues to inspire and remind us that even in the most turbulent times, the human spirit and mastery can leave an indelible mark.